Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 134 of the Rich Cheese Radio podcast, your home for horological hot takes, taboo topics, and often unpopular watch opinions. I'm your host, Bro Dinky. With me, as always, is my good friend, Mr. Schmidt. Schmidt, welcome back from your week away. How have you been?
Thank you. I've been good, man. I've been good. Busy with travel as work travel is starting to kick up a little bit. I got one more kind of week in between limbo at home, and then we're going live, baby. We're going
Q1,
in.
baby, right?
Yeah, it's Q1. We're already, well into Q1,
Yeah.
so it's crazy. Second month of the year, but yeah, man, it's gearing up for another year of travel on the road and doing our thing. But happy to be recording 134. So.
For sure. Yeah, it was definitely a hellacious week for myself as well. I was just stretched super thin also, but again, happy to be back in the saddle. We've got some good stuff for this week. I'm sure plenty of you have already seen sort of the teasers on social media, and this is going to be an episode right along with it. So we'll get into the new stuff. Let's start. You know what? Let's start with Timex. This new, we've talked about this one before, the Giorgio Galli collection. They put out a new one, limited edition in titanium. It's the S2TI, Swiss made automatic 38 millimeter. For a Timex, it's a little pricey. It's $1,950, but it
It's a
is
lot.
a beauty of a watch, I gotta say. I mean, it's kind of plain, but that's sort of the style. He's very one note, very monochromatic, kind of simple shapes and stuff like that. But it's a very handsome looking watch, and I'm curious to, if anybody gets one of these, if I can kind of play around with it, because I would love to feel the build quality on it, because I like it. I do like it as a watch, and
Yeah.
the case back looks really nice. The bracelet system they use looks really nice. I don't know if you call it that. They have like a really cool little animation of it.
Yeah, they said I think it's called the eye change.
Yeah, you can like pull out the outer portion of the bracelet, turn it, take out the link, and then turn it back and clip it back in. Again, I don't know if that, we always talk about this stuff like it looks great on paper. I don't know how that's going to go
Yeah, yeah.
in the real.
This kind of reminds me of what Cartier
Yeah,
did. What was it? 5 or 6 years ago
right.
with
Where
their quick switch
you
system.
could pinch the links. Yeah,
Yeah. So I mean, as far as I understood, the system from Cartier worked extremely well. And I was wrong. I said eye change. It's the eye size.
eye size.
So I misspoke. But basically, the Cartier system worked really well until it didn't. So I have a lot of contacts within the industry, and I've talked to different retailers that have carried the kind of quick switch system. I know, right? The quick switch system from Cartier, and they said it works really, really well until the bracelets get some type of debris or wrist
That's
cheese
what I
on the
always worried
bracelet,
about. Yeah.
and that's when they start to fail. So in most cases, they need a ultrasonic cleaning or something like that, where they can remove some of that debris and get that stuff out there before you can really get the strap or bracelet off the case and manipulate the links. So we'll see how this works out long term. I mean, I realistically, there's probably not going to be this many pieces sold of this particular watch because let's be honest, it is a $2,000
Yeah, it's kind
Timex.
of a mismatch in that regard for the brand, but
Yeah,
also, the other ones have been received very well from what I understand. Everybody I know who has had one has been like, this is really surprising for, who they are and what they, not that they put out a bad product, but, they're definitely on the budget end of things. And so
yeah.
when they come up with something like this, I mean, it's 12 millimeters, 38, diameter and 18 lug width. So like it's a nice little package. They put a lot of little bells and whistles, quick change bracelet, this neat link system again, kind of to be seen, but there's a lot of really nice design aspects. I mean, the case back looks really good. The crown is kind of unique to this model, looks really nice. So
I mean, I agree with you, man.
my
I really
interest
do
has
agree
been
with you.
piqued.
I mean, yeah, I'm going to say the same way. And if you look at all the Gali before, like the G1s or the not the G1, but the original Gali, and then they did the two.
S2, S1, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, those were sitting around the $500 price point, which was expensive and is expensive for a Timex, right?
Right. Yeah.
But they're all gone. They're all sold out. So those pieces are no longer available. And the biggest departure from this version versus what we saw in the past, the previous three versions, this is a Swiss movement. This
Yes.
is a titanium case. This is, got carbon elements into it. This is a very distinctly different timepiece given the materials and the tech that kind of goes into producing this watch. That's why this watch is so much more expensive and the price point is so much more interesting because I mean, you're getting it. Again, like you said, the size specs 12 mil thick, 38 millimeter titanium. This watch must wear like nothing. And the ultimate thing I love about this watch is it is an original design. Like it does not look like anything else. It doesn't look like, oh, this is just a filtered down Rolex or a filtered down Zenith or this really looks like this. It's its own unique design, and I have to give credit to this gentleman Giorgio Galli because his designs are pretty freaking cool. And this is the kind of futuristic design that I actually like. Like I can see this watch still being cool in 10 years from now.
Right. Well, it's reserved enough. It's not so
That's my point.
avant-garde that it's
It's futuristic enough to flirt with that design language, and you obviously know this is not a watch from the past, but it's still forward thinking enough in its design that it's going to be not specifically tied to one generation of watches, right? Like, oh yeah, that one came from the 2000s when everything was like a Link and everything was like an eBell and all that stuff, right? This is not going to be like a Bulgari, like a Octo Finissimo. Like, oh yeah, that was the 2010s and the 2020s. Like those types of specific watches where people associate them with a range of time. This watch is kind of ambiguous in that sense. You obviously know it's not old, it's not a vintage piece, but you can't really place when it would have come out because it's kind of its unique design lends it to that. And I like it. I mean, would I be crazy to spend $2,000 on a Timex? Absolutely. But I mean, specs out alone, I mean, like you're basically getting an Oris, when Oris used to not be $4,000.
yeah, I remember those days.
So, I mean, that's kind of the way I'm looking at it, but
No,
it's beautiful.
I'm with you on that, and I'm always curious. I know it's an LE, and I didn't see any number specifications on allocation or anything, but I always wonder if this is maybe just a kind of a one off, or if this is maybe sort of a like broaching, a bridge of things to come, where we might be. Listen, it might not be 2,000, but it might be 1,000 going in.
I mean, and
Not this
maybe,
watch, but just future collections
yeah,
creeping up into the 1,000. And hey, we'll throw you a nicer timepiece. I mean, not for nothing. They're in general competing against a lot of the sort of I don't even know what you call them. They're big names, but they're not big names with us, right? Your MBMTs, your Invictus and
yeah,
stuff that people are aware of that are not in this space. They know those names. I mean, I've had numerous people who've sent me MVMTs and stuff like that. And they're like, "Hey, what do you think?" And I'm like, "I will show you three other watches with the same exact look because a lot of their watches are so derived anyway." I'm
yeah,
like, "Let's show you
exactly.
the exact same stuff in a few different brand offerings, and each one will be superior quality wise, and you can take it from there." And a lot of
Hmm.
times I end up in Timex because a lot of times, I mean, they have so many different watches and different designs and everything, but a lot of times it's somewhere in the Marlin range or something like that. And I'm like, listen, you'll be much happier with this. I'm not going to say it's a titan of build quality or if that it's, obviously like the gold plating is not real gold, but you were looking at that in a much crappier watch anyway. So
Right,
I'm going to give
right.
you something that at least you can be proud of. And I know the name Timex is kind of, I mean, it's kind of known up and down, like where kids have Timexes, okay, but like then you also have, I mean, funny as it is, you had Diddy calling out Richard Mille saying that they're nothing better than a Timex at one point. I remember if you saw that video or not, but he went on
Mm-mm.
some rant. He was off his rocker, and he's like, don't buy these Richard Milles. They're nothing but Timexes. Blah blah blah. And he's going off and off, and obviously it's hyperbole, but it was just
Yeah,
the
yeah.
name being associated in it. I was like, oh, I was like, that's a nice plug for Timex. But at the end of the day, they do put out a nice enough watch that I would spend money on it. I mean, I think the cues are nice. I think they have a bunch of nice ranges in addition to their sort of bargain offerings that many of us started with. So, I wind up here a lot when I'm recommending watches for people. I think the Marlins are really, really nice, especially for, you get your 20s, 30s guy who's like, I don't even want. I'm not looking for an impressive watch. Like I just want a something that will work every day and that I could wear with
Hmm.
everything. All right, perfect. Like let's get you a Marlin. Let's get you something like that. And
Yeah.
I just always wind up here. So I'll be.
It's hard not to though. It's hard
Yeah,
not to. I
agreed.
mean, and we've covered them so many times over the last several years since we've been running this podcast, and they never cease to to amaze me. Whether it's design, whether it's being kind of the barometer we've talked about, where we start to see different style changes happen, things like that. I mean, we're they're producing some pretty cool stuff, and it's consistent.
Yeah,
That's the other thing too that freaks me out is what they're able to produce is constant. Like it's not like okay, we see them do one launch of product a year. Like they're doing one launch of product every like month and a half,
yeah, which is
and,
awesome.
which is crazy. It's crazy. It's almost like Swatch levels of product rollout. You're just constantly producing, and they're phasing stuff out. They'll discontinue stuff or they'll mark it down as sale items and things like that. But they're making way for newer inventory and things like that are coming. I mean, like just looking at the website right now, apparently we're getting the Timex Intrepid coming back. This is a watch that was originally came out in 1995. And it's got a picture of a dude from 1995 wearing this Timex like with his business suit, like a power suit.
Yeah,
And apparently that's coming back. So they're digging in more into the archives of stuff and getting another piece, out, which is interesting because it looks kind of cool. And we were talking about those what was it called? The
the 8 lap. Which one?
no, yeah, well, we're talking about the 8 lap, but the category that we talked about where we kind of fit all these watches into the
Oh, the
was it
geezer watch.
the geezer watch. Thank you. I wanted to
He's
say the
he's
granddaddy watch,
he's
but like the geezer watch, I'm like, this is like a perfect encapsulation of that identity, right? Like this is like a vintagey watch that's probably not a lot of money, but could be a banger that you wear forever, and it's coming back out. So it'll be interesting to see when it finally does hit the market. But this is good. Timex is always a hitter. Whether you're getting mechanical, whether you're getting quartz, where you don't care, you're just getting something that's iconic and faithful. And as the slogan goes, it takes a licking and keeps on ticking. So there you go.
yeah, very nice, very nice. All right, up next is not necessarily a release because it's not really released yet, but Volcane has teased a skin diver chronograph based on one of their older Inca Block models, which is very handsome, and they put it up on their social media, but there's nothing written about it yet. So that's going to be interesting to see. But it's definitely a vintage take. It looks really good. I'm excited to see if they spec it the same because a lot of these chronographs were very well sized when they came out, but it's very handsome. It's all black. It's got a little bit of touches of red on the subdials and some kind of yellowed out lumen, and it's very Volcane. So I'm excited to check it out. I'm a little disappointed they don't have any press on it yet because I really wanted to kind
Yeah.
of break it down. But you did send it to me from their own Instagram, and yet there's nothing on it, which I found interesting.
Sorry.
But we'll put it out there. We'll put a pin in it, as the folks say in the biz. We'll come back to it.
But
Uh,
yeah, it looks good. I mean, the initial look of it is looks pretty slick, and I can't wait to see it when it's officially released. But it's kind of that in that vein of vintage diver, skin divers, chronos. It's kind of very similar to what we see from Nevada Grenchen, but now going to be in a Volcane. And I think, they're doing it right. Price points are good for Volcane as well. So it's good to see them kind of diving into their archives, re-releasing some stuff. And coincidentally, I do actually have a Volcane dealer in my city, which
oh
is
wow!
nuts. Yeah, I was like, what? And they're like, yeah, we've been carrying Volcane for like 10 years. I'm like, I didn't even know you existed.
Look
So
at
now I
that,
have to go over there and check you out.
and you guys are getting a wind up,
I know, right? Look at
moving on
that.
up.
And it was funny. Didn't we ask for that last
We
year?
did, I
I'm pretty
believe.
sure we talked about this.
Yes, yes,
It's
yes.
like, gosh, God works in mysterious ways. Or maybe he just listens to our podcast. That's probably more true.
He's like the first and second on the ballot for downstairs.
I'm just like, all right, I'll take it. I'll take it. So we'll see. Okay, and chronograph, 1970s skin diver. When it comes, we'll let you know more.
All right, another kind of vintagey inspired piece that I'm really digging from a brand that I don't generally vibe that much with. I think we've talked about it before. It's very big overseas, but here in the States, it's not huge. Rado put out a new piece, and it's the Captain Cook Overpole, and it's spec'd very, very well. I mean, this is a very, very handsome piece. I really like this watch. I can't lie to you. It's 39 mils, 10.9 thick, which I love,
Hmm. Hmm.
and it's just gorgeous. It's got a world timer bezel on it. It's got I can't tell if it's a roulette date or if it's just a red date, but either way, I'm
I
digging it.
think I think Rados are traditionally just red
Just
dates.
red. Okay.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
have no experience with them, so I would not know. Gold indices, gold PVD case, bracelet. This is a very, very handsome watch, and
Yeah.
it's spec'd very nicely. I'm digging it.
Yeah, it's cool, man. Like I told you this offline before we started recording tonight that I was like, when I first saw this watch, I'm like, oh, that's a cool vintage Rado. I've never seen that. And they're like,
I
oh no,
fell
it's a
into the
brand
same
new one.
trap.
Like, no, it's a brand new one. We're bringing it back, and I'm like, oh, wow, like that is kind of funky and weird, but also very nice. Great specs, like you mentioned. This one's we got an overpull before, but I think that original overpull was more in line with the original size of the overpull when it was debuted in the 1960s.
Right.
The overpull is a kind of adaptation of the Captain Cook line, but it wasn't necessarily a diver variant. It was more so like a functional variant of certain things. So in this case, we're seeing that same thing, but this one's been inflated a little bit in size to 39, which I still think based on the photos that I've seen on wrist shots, like it is perfect. It's just enough of the vintage charm and flair to feel vintage and feel like of the period without having to really deal with a watch that feels like it's of the period. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Limited edition, only 1962 pieces apparently, but it just looks good, man. And the fact that it comes with a golden beads of rice
Beads of
bracelet,
rice. I was gonna say it
I'm
looks
just like,
fantastic.
man, come on. Come on. That is so sick. Yeah, I would love to see this watch. I mean, I can't imagine there's that many floating around, so I'm sure this is going to be one of those pieces like they're probably going to sell pretty quick. But man, is it a really cool watch.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of did the same thing. I looked at it, I was like, oh, that's a cool old Dorado. I was like, I wonder if they're bringing this back, and it's like, no, no, this is the new
This
one.
is
And I'm
this is
like,
the new one.
oh,
You're like,
okay then.
wow, I slept on that.
Yeah, pretty awesome though. And I mean,
Yeah.
2,700 Swiss francs, which is not horrible.
No.
They did put in some neat stuff, some Navicron hairsprings and stuff, so it's not like you're just getting a basic, at a movement or anything. They did jazz it up some. But yeah, I mean, ah, that's definitely tempting. And you are right. The older one is 37
Hmm.
millimeters.
Yeah.
This one is 39, a little beefier. But again, I think it's nicely proportioned and would love to take one for a spin.
Yeah. No joke. And especially manual wine, dude. Like that's sick.
Yep.
It's very, very cool piece.
All right. Now for a few more watches that are a little more in line with our theme today. This one I cannot believe came out because our last episode we touched on this, and
Dude, I again, I'm telling you, the man upstairs is messing with
this
us.
is the definition of esoteric. Okay. So Christopher Ward puts out a Sakan collab with a snake theme. Not snake. I understand it's Year of the Snake, but we're not talking about a boa constrictor or a cobra. We're talking about the Nokia game that was in the last episode. Listen, we're not on the press release list. I did not know this was coming. This wasn't like a super teaser or some tongue in cheek nonsense.
I would love to say that I would love to say that was the case because that would make more
We
sense. Like,
talked about Snake on the Nokia last episode,
yep.
and here it is on the dial of a watch this week. I almost fell out of my chair when I saw this. I was like, this has to be like, it's not April, can't be April Fools.
Nope. 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 Nope.
I can't believe it. I mean, it's
Either the production times of making something go from concept to to full blown production are very short these days, or we're just way
or the
more ahead of
universe.
the curve than we thought.
The universe is just strange.
Yeah, it's pretty weird. So, what do you think about this guy?
I mean, it's okay. It's a kitschy watch. That's kind of what what they do over at Sikon. It's kind of like you're kind of buying a tongue in cheek sort of a
Oh,
joke
for sure, for sure.
as it goes. Again, I'm not huge on the buying a Chinese zodiac symbol. I don't know if that's even right. Lunar symbol
Mhm.
commemorative watch. I mean, I don't think that hits home enough for me to.
No, I think, overall this is probably the coolest way to do a Year of the Snake style
Yeah,
watch.
it's a little less obnoxious. I'll say
It's a
that much
little
for
less
sure.
obnoxious. And, at the very end, whether you care about the Year of the Snake or not, it's just kind of funny because it is the Nokia Snake game like that we were talking about. I mean, and it's something that, again, if you are, an older millennial or you are a boomer or something like that, like you remember playing this game. Like everyone did. And if you didn't play it yourself, then your dad did. And that was how he de-stressed after a long work day was playing Snake. So those types of things, very funny. Again, just hyper coincidence that we talked about it on the last week's episode. And here it is again in front of us, just cherry picked out of the 2000s and the aughts. And I'm like, this isn't even real. There's no way.
So
But
this it has a limited purchase window, January 29th to February 12th, to coincide with Lunar New Year celebrations. It's priced at $1,225 US or 1,050 pounds in the UK. It's not a limited edition, but it does have a limited purchase window, and it houses a Sellita SW200 in a 40 mil case. On the back, it has "Cheers to the year."
to the
Sorry, "Cheers
snake
to the
here.
snake year" with an S. I'm assuming that's like a joke, like years.
Yeah,
I could be
because I mean,
wrong.
if you look at the dial, it doesn't say Swiss made. It says Hiss made.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of what I picked up. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't
No,
think
you're
so.
definitely not wrong. That's like on doing his deed. But I will say this though. What's also funny is I completely lost my train of thought there.
Something
Never
about
mind.
his.
Yeah, yeah, nothing. Never mind. I had a great point. I was going to drive it home, and nope, she's gone. So
It is violently lime green, and
this is
so
more Kermit than the Kermit. So
yeah, I would agree with that. But yeah, so if this is your color scheme and such, and you want something kind of cheeky, this might be up your alley. But I'm more just astonished that we have Retro Game Snake after
yeah,
talking about Retro Game Snake. So
yep.
incredible, incredible. All right, next watch up, Bamford releases the D300, a new era in dive watches. You may have seen this one. It kind of looks like a Panerai case,
Hmm.
and it's got Explorer numerals, but it's a diver. It's a chunky diver. They come in white. They come in black with kind of hyper blue accents, or you can get it in kind of a grayish green color with orange, or a navy with yellow accents. They come in around $1,500. I
And ceramic.
yeah, they are ceramic, FYI, which is nice. It's a nice touch.
It is
Um,
nice. I don't love this watch. That's my first thing. I think the best colorway of all of them is the black and kind of like ice blue.
which
This
is
watch is
popular
just
with them, right? That's kind of like their shtick, right? Kind of like
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. But it's just like this watch is just a lot for me. Like Panerai cushion case style, okay, I can live with that. But then you get these very like technical, like futuristic style numbers, and I don't know, it's just not
Kind of a
my cup of
mishmash.
tea. It's a little bit of a mishmash for me, and that's just stylistically the case. I just again, nothing against this watch. I've never seen one. I've never touched one. I know nothing about what they're doing at Bamford other than that they used to, get all their popularity by customizing people's Rolexes. But at the end of the day, to me, this is just not a designed watch that I find interesting, nor would I want to own. So that's just me personally. But some people like their stuff, so I'm sure they sell some things to people. But it's not ever going to be me.
Yeah. So you are getting a titanium core case with ceramic for £1,500, which is not crazy. I think that's a pretty nice price for what you're getting.
Sure.
2824 inside, and it's 42 mils by 13, which is not horrible for a 300-meter diver. It's sporty. It's a little bit aggressive. I think it probably has its market. Again, I don't know if it's me, but I think it has its market, and it probably, maybe it does well across the pond. That's kind of their thing as well. And you might be seeing a theme here,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, again, I think you're right. I think it's a little bit of a mishmash,
I
but
mean, that's just me. That's just me. I mean, they've had some other cool stuff in the past, like the Big Eye Chronos, some of their. I mean, I wouldn't say the GMTs particularly tickled my fancy, but like my favorite that they've ever done has been the Big Eye Chronos.
yeah, that was
Like
really
the
nice.
carbon cases and things like that. Like those are actually pretty cool. Like I don't care if it says Banford on the dial. It's a mono pusher chrono technical design. It looks pretty freaking cool. It looks very 70s. And you're doing it in a funky case design. Like, why the hell not? Like that's cool. This other stuff that they have on their website, I'm actually surprised I've never gone through it. What the hell? Did you know they made like a freaking like solar watch or something?
No, I've only seen sort of the ones that have been put out there, and a lot of times they're limited editions or kind of short runs or collabs, and so I've seen those, but I've really never delved into their entire catalog.
Yeah, the Nepro Solar 2024. I'm like, okay. And there's like a Bamford version of it. Pre-order it now. Your chance to own the Bamford Nepro Solar watch. It kind of looks like the Gerard Perregaux, like with the digital readout, like that driver's like digital watch.
Oh yeah,
It's kind of like that, but technically, much more cost effective. It's 582 pounds versus $5,000 or whatever it was. But yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
yeah.
kind of how I feel about this one.
All right. Up next is a brand that we like very much. We've talked about before on the show. That is Fair. They came out with a GMT bezel collection. Runs about 1,575 ish. Oh, that looks like euro. That's not pounds. And you can add a bracelet. Looks like you're adding on about 240. But these are 38 mils, 12.5 thick, which is very nice. It also looks like there's a 40 mil as well, which is interesting. I mean, I don't know why you need both, but hey, whatever. They're powered by Solitas. As I said, they kind of have the standard kind of fairer look to them, but they have these fancy GMT bezels. I really like this one that has sort of like the Bakelite look on it. So there's one that comes in. It's called Charlton Green. It's a
Yep, that's
very
my favorite too.
it's like I guess tealish color. 50/50 GMT bezel. The top is the greenish color. The bottom is white. It's got sort of a cream honeycomb dial. Looks really, really good. There's one called Maize Blue. It's got navy blue coloring on the GMT bezel with a
Mm.
white bottom, and it's kind of got like an aquamatic look to it. Like it has a lot of neon orange on it, orange loom,
Yeah, yeah,
white dial, orange strap. It's a little more aggressive, a little different styling than the one I just talked about. Then there's another one that also has kind of different styling. It's called the Crooms 3. It's got a burgundy sunburst dial, black bezel all the way around. So
hmm
something a little different. And then there's the Maze 3, which is black on top, white on bottom on the bezel. And this one's kind of all over the place. It's got light blue loom. It's got an orange GMT hand. It looks like a lot of their previous releases,
yeah,
just
yeah.
kind of like slapped together. I don't really know what's going on there, but the for sure the Charlton Green one is absolutely stunning. I really like this. I think they put just enough like orange hints on the dial and stuff like that for me that I really like it. Now you made an interesting observation when it comes to
hmm
these, which is about the lugs. If you look at the lugs, they do sort of slope downward, which is weird. I mean, it's not that I've never seen this on watches before, but I I do think you may be onto something here.
Yeah, and it's not so much that it slopes downward for me, is that the fact that the lug almost as it's sloping downward, it kind of angles backwards. But in that angular situation going backwards, it creates this very blunt, like stop to the lug. And so I noticed it on their Instagram profile shots when they were taking it. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. This watch looks very handsome. Like it looks
Yeah, for
very
sure.
good. And maybe it's just the angle of the shot. But I was like, this just looks like a very, very raised area that I can catch on something very quickly. The other thing that I did not like about this watch is the bracelet's design. It's like dude, it's 2025. Can we get a female end link bracelet? You know, everyone complains about comfort and wearability, and this is kind of, to me, I think, a step back for Farrah to do that. I mean, we have a male end link bracelet. Some people don't mind it. Some people
Oh
don't
yeah,
even
it's
know
a
it's a
little
thing.
aggressive.
It's just, it is what it is. But I mean, again, it's like, that for most people, that's a concern. It's a consideration. It helps their much smaller wrists. And there seems to be many, many more of those these days with that in mind. So I'm curious to see this watch in person. It's a beautiful design, the colorway, the coloration, this honeycomb, and it's funny, like you said, honeycomb. It almost reminds me like snake skin.
Yeah, I agree with
Like
that.
that's
It's
kind
not
of
like a perfect honeycomb. It's a
no,
little
no, no. It's more
elongated.
elongated than that, but it looks like snake skin. Like it's kind of crazy, but it looks cool. And just the coloration. I mean, you have like that aqua blue, the kind of beigey, creamy white, and then the use of these other types of vibrant colors of blue, like you have more of a navy blue, a lighter blue, then purple. Like it's just a very cool summery feel, and I love that. Like this brand does so well for me. Everything that they do to me is basically a home run, and I would be happy owning any of them. But this particular watch, I want to see how the case plays, because I think that could be the biggest issue with this case is it just creates a very blunt tip where I'm going to hit it into something. I'm going to catch it on something
Yes,
very,
snagging is not ideal
yeah,
when it comes
yeah.
to watches.
Especially now for a watch that is considered more of a technical field, travel, sport watch, that kind of thing. That's not the kind of stuff that I want to think about when I'm wearing my watch. Like, oh, I have to be more cautious because this, and this reason, right? That's not what I want.
Yeah, I agree totally. It's not something. Again, I mean, you think about wearing a backpack, you think about jackets, belts, anything like that.
Yeah.
Pockets. It's you never want to be snagging on anything. I mean, any opportunity for your watch to get ripped off the spring bars is not a good one.
No, 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 not at all. And I definitely don't want to be in that situation either. I'm like, that's just not what I want. So, I mean, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how it plays. But I think, comparatively to all the other pieces that I've seen that they've released before, this is a point of contention for me. But we'll see. And just maybe go back and look at the Aquamatics. I'm like, oh, dang, I still love them.
Yeah, those are nice.
I know, and the price point's so good.
All right. Up next, Studio Underdog and Fears have collaborated on a limited release of 200 pieces for British Watchmakers Day. For those of you who don't know, that's actually next month, March 8th, 2025. But it seems like they've sort of been getting the ball rolling way earlier. I mean, I've seen things since this past month. So
Hmm.
they've definitely been hyping that up. I know they're doing a big event of some sorts over across the pond there. So this has a Solita SW210 manual wind in it. It's got 100-meter water resistance. Comes in around 1,000 pounds, 38 mils by 12 thick, and it's called the Gimlet. I mean, kind of unsurprising. We know Studio likes to do a lot of food-related things. Like Gimlet, if you don't know, is a cocktail that involves, I believe,
Yeah.
it's vodka and lime juice. But this is very much both their watches, which is nice because a lot of times you see collabs
Yeah, I agree.
where one kind of overtakes the other. You look at it dead on, you know that Studio does this dial with the two screws in it, like we saw in their other cocktail themed watches, like the pink
Yeah, the
lemonade.
pilots.
Yep. And they also like to do the printing of the numerals on the crystal, which I think they've done here as well. It's got a fierce case, which also kind of has that Panerai cushion look to it. Definitely smaller in this case, but it's got that. It's got sort of the onion crown on it. You could tell it's nice. It's like seeing a child of where it looks like both the parents.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
for sure.
it's also a loom dial, which is cool, and it's in honor of the name Gimlet. It has sort of this really nice kind of pale greenish look to it.
I mean, this is just a beautiful watch. I'm
It is.
sorry. Like,
It's
I saw
very
this and
handsome.
I'm like, damn, this is a good looking watch. And like you said, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said it's like a child that looks like both parents. I totally agree with that. I think there's a lot of Studio Underdogs influence in here. There's a lot of Fears influence in here. And if I had to bifurcate the two, I couldn't tell where one started and the other one ended. You know what I mean? I think the design is beautiful. I love the fact that they went with a full loom dial in kind of what would be a dress watch,
Yeah, interesting
which
for
is
sure.
it's so cool. I mean, and the thing is like it's so refreshing, and again, it's kind of funny that it's named after a
A
refreshing
drink,
cocktail,
yeah.
but it's just like it's a refreshing in the sense of design. Like I just think it looks very, very cool. 38 millimeter case, manual wind movement, this kind of almost gradient color from lighter lime green to kind of more darker lime green
Yep.
as the dial gets, further towards the bottom. The influence of this completely see-through crystal dial that Studio Underdog popularized with its pilot series, the two screws, like it just looks freaking cool. And I am so pissed that we can't get them in the United States. Like this would be a piece that I would actually want to own. And it's funny because they're like, hey, look, this is only for British Watchmakers Day. But if you write us a cool essay of why you'd really be interested in this piece, we'll reach out to you directly if there's any of further availability. This watch is gonna sell out instantly. Like, who are we trying to play
Come
here?
on now.
Like, who are we trying to play here, man? Like, I love it too much. Okay, like it's so good. It's so good, and I'm very happy for both of these brands because Fears has got such a cool original story. It was a brand that existed before the great grandson resurrected it. Riffing on some of the original designs and things like that. It's just such a cool design and story, and for Studio to literally just come out of nowhere, like literally thin air, just matriculated. And like, I'm making watches. Oh, and by the way, I'm designing them after food. And you're like, what? Who who would do this? And then you come up with the most weird name ever. Studio Underdog? Like it was just kind of this weird thing. Like that's the kind of name like you come up with your drunk friends at a bar. You're like, what should we
Sounds like your rap battle name.
yeah, it's like, yeah, what should we call our band? Like, oh, let's call it. Looks around at the bar. There's a pamphlet for like a studio for rent, and it's like, oh, yeah, I've always wanted to be the underdog. Like that's just kind of the way I imagine that story to happen. Whether it did or did not is another story. But you talk about brands that are getting the recognition and carving their own way through the space, and there's no better representation of this than them. And I'm happy for their success. I hope they get everything that they get. I mean, again, not that long ago, Studio collabed with with Moser. So I
Moser,
mean,
yeah.
I mean, like anything is possible at this point. I think. But yeah, man, it's pretty surprising, but in a good way. So I'm happy for their success.
Yeah. And appropriately, the case back is a lime.
Yes, I know, and it's like the smallest little tiny lime ever, but it's just like it's
It's good
perfect.
though. I'm not a huge fan of the giant, obnoxious case back
It
engraving.
doesn't.
Like,
You don't need it. You don't
certainly
need it.
not here.
No, you don't need it, and it's cool. So.
Dang.
That pink lemonade still got me, man.
Yeah, no, it was nice. I
The
saw it in
watch.
person. I got to check it out at not this year's wind up, last year's wind up, but it was nice.
Yeah. I'm still contemplating if I should try to tell my wife that I want to go to a different city on my birthday to go to a watch
You're like, I'm
meetup.
gonna go to this event, even though we now have one here.
Yeah, and like I may or may not spend money. So that's the
that's
other
the
thing
that's
too.
the bigger issue. Is I'm taking my credit card with me. I don't know if it's a good idea.
Yeah, and it's also like, well, I mean, it is my birthday,
Right? I
right?
should
Like
be able to do what I
I
want.
should be able to do what I
Just
want.
saying.
Yeah. Yeah. All the guys that say that have never been married longer than a
No,
year.
no, God, no.
So there you go. We'll see. We'll see if I make a pop up in the newest wind up location. So we'll see.
Yeah. All right. So if you haven't connected the dots yet, we're kind of keeping in the theme here with all the sort of hype surrounding next month's event and all the watch drops going on. I was like, hey, why don't we talk about a little bit of British watchmaking? I mean, we think about watchmaking, we think about the Swiss for sure. You have, some Germany mixed in, you got some Japan mixed in. We have a few randos, you have Italy, places. Watchmaking has happened all over, but I don't think a lot of people necessarily think British off the top of their head
No.
per se.
Yeah.
Some people might say, what the hell are you talking about? I respect that. But I'm just saying, a lot of people, I think everybody, you go directly to Switzerland, like I said, well, there's a lot of players in and around there. I mean, Russia has a rich watch history and everything, but
Hmm.
I think there might be more than what people typically think about. I mean, even in just when I was kind of recounting brands and things like that in my head, I was like, oh, there is a lot more than I initially thought. I mean,
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
certainly a few that stick out, but I think even probably in just talking, we're gonna hit a few that people were like, oh yeah, oh I forgot about them. But yeah, well, I think we're definitely just gonna talk about some bangers. I mean, I personally have a few,
Hmm.
and I'm sure you do too. But they also, in addition to having not just their sort of big brands, there's a lot of. I mean, you can go on the list, and you might need the help of Google for this one, but there are plenty of really famous British watchmakers as well, independents and sort of godfathers of the industry also.
I mean, but even before that, I mean, I think it, kind of giving some historical context to this is also important. We talk a lot about Swiss and Russian and Japanese and German and all these different places, right? But we really don't talk a lot about British watchmaking, which is so crazy
Yeah.
because a lot of the stuff that we see today in these brands was created in England first. I mean, hell, one of the most important watches on the face of the earth, the brand Rolex, was conceptualized in England.
Yeah.
It started there. Hans Wilsdorf and his brother-in-law created a watch company, and it started out in England.
I mean, even the name Tudor, right?
Yeah. Why is it the English shield? Like I mean, these are things that like
They are
when
relevant. Yeah.
they are very relevant and we don't think about them. I mean, I'll just kind of rip some off the top of my head. I mean, famous clockmakers and watchmakers over the years. You had Robert Hooke, Thomas Tompion, George Graham. George Graham created George Harrison created the marine chronometer. So you had George Graham and George Harrison. And then
The
you
Beatles?
had, did I say that right? Now you got me confused.
George Harrison's from the Beatles. There might be two. I mean, that's a
Let me
definitely
double
a
check because I'm
it's
pretty
definitely
sure
a
there is a George
possibility.
Harrison. Let's see here.
I mean, would it surprise me if a musician was involved in something that had to do with timing? No, it wouldn't at all. I just want to know now. I'm genuinely curious. This is why I always say that we need a third guy to do the
I'm
googling
sorry.
and
I
the
said
fact
George
checking.
Harrison. I meant John Harrison. John
Okay,
Harrison.
yep.
Thank you for correcting me. I
No,
was
I
like,
just
wait, now I'm crazy.
I was like, tell me the dude from the Beatles is
John
involved in
Harrison. John
watchmaking.
Harrison. But John Harrison created the marine chronometer. Like he was one of the guys who helped ships navigate the oceans using longitude and latitude. Up until this point in time, like that was physically not possible. There was not timing devices that could allow you to measure your position on the open waves when there was no such thing as a GPS. And people were literally trying to chart the earth, right? The British Empire conquered everywhere. They were one of the greatest naval seafaring nations history has ever seen. And a lot of that is attributed to their ability to create chronometer systems and ways to tell time, given the violent pitch and roll of ships, which could lead to extreme deviation of
Yeah, of
timekeeping
course.
while on the water. I mean, this happened after one of the greatest naval accidents in British military history, maritime history, where something like 2,000 sailors were lost at sea because they ran into one of the most violent storms you could ever imagine. And this is what prompted the British nobility to basically say, hey, we'll pay whoever can create an answer to this problem X amount of money. And it was like 20,000 pounds or something like that, which is like, multi millions of dollars today. And John Harrison was the one to do it, and they never paid him. So there's this whole thing there too. But it's crazy. And then one of the most important watchmakers that we never talk about, his name is Thomas Mudge. Terrible name, but incredibly brilliant watchmaker. His invention literally revolutionized the entirety of the watch industry because he created the lever escapement in
Oh,
1755. Today we call it the Swiss lever escapement. It wasn't Swiss. It was English. So the English lever escapement, which was adopted by the Swiss, that's changed its name to the Swiss lever escapement. But basically, if you look up Thomas Mudge's original drawings of the lever escapement in 1755, it looks exactly like what you're going to pluck out of your tag, which is insane because it's approaching, I think, almost 300 years. It's like 260, 270 years, something like that today. And that technology is still being utilized in 90% of the watchmaking industry. Pretty
Wow.
nuts.
Yeah, that
Pretty
is
nuts. I mean, it's crazy, right? Like, this is like one of the most important mechanical components in the history of watchmaking. It's something like 260 years old. And this dude invented it in 1755, and it's still being used in a paddock today. Like, it is, if that's not mind numbing to you, I don't know what is.
yeah, that's insane.
But this is kind of the history that most people don't know about when they think about Swiss watchmaking. Because, like, oh, yeah, yeah, all the best watches are made in Switzerland. Like, well, that wasn't necessarily true. A lot of these people immigrated from places like England and different places and settled in Switzerland. And that's where they started making these watches. And a lot of this has to do with like history and the Protestant Reformation. And we're not going to go down that rabbit hole because that is literally a rabbit hole to go down. But it's just kind of cool that, in celebration of this, British Watchmakers Day, which is something that I think that they're obviously very proud of because for them, it's very much a cultural identity thing that is not shared. And I think this is their way of bringing back that idea that, watchmaking in many instances originated in England. Okay, and it's we need to talk about that. And I think that's important. So I'm happy to see this is a thing. I think they said this is the second year it's happened. This gathering of the English and British watchmakers. So it's cool to see it. But yeah, that's kind of a little pseudo history lesson of different people. I think it was worth sharing for this. So
Yeah, very nice, very nice. That's what we keep you around for, you know.
I try to earn my keep here. Bro does literally everything else. I just come up with a few things that I can research. So
Interesting sidebar. um, yeah, and I think the military aspect definitely plays a big role with British watchmaking. I mean, that's where my head goes first, but it's also probably because those are my favorite watches I think they make.
yeah.
For me, like CWC is
Yep.
just
Yep. Yep.
sick. Like I love all of their watches. Like if you and the fact that they give you like the military issued ones are dope.
Yeah.
Like they the same exact like they'll give you the one, which is awesome. I have a G10 somewhere around here. It's kind of your minimalist field watch, but it's it's got the fixed lugs, it's quartz, it's everything kind of bare bones but rugged that you want in a watch. The Navy divers are awesome. I mean, I think they still have that Dirty Dozen look to them, which is sick. Like they nailed the styling on these. Like they
Yeah.
all look so good. They have the big triangle at 12. Like now they have a variety of different looms and different you know case materials and stuff like that. But it's they're just so good looking, especially like the black ones. It's sort of like the bluish greenish loom on them. I love that one. But everything comes out of NATO. It's sort of just like this is your bang around watch. Like this is what we're gonna give our armed forces, and it's good enough for
Hmm.
you too.
Hmm.
So, and the prices are good. I mean,
The prices is so fair. Like it's not even good. It's fair.
for
It's
sure.
extremely
I mean,
fair.
you're getting a military spec watch. I mean, granted, again, they're quartz, which
Yeah.
nothing wrong with. Reliable, right as day. But you're looking at 700 pounds, 500 pounds, 240 for the G10. Like it's awesome, and even then you used to be able to, you probably can't find them anymore, but you used to be able to find these G10s for like $100 on eBay with a stamp, like a military stamp on the back. Somebody wore it.
Yeah. It was
So
issued.
yeah, it's cool. There's a ton of history here. They have a lot of they kept a lot of like the same like little case nuances and dial nuances, which was really nice. So I love CWC. I mean, when I think of British watchmaking, that's where I go immediately. But these watches are just so awesome, and I've heard other people who've owned them, who love them too. So I think it's a big testimonial to their abilities in that regard.
No, no, I think this is a good one. CWC is great, man. This is one of those watches that personally I've always flirted with the idea of owning, but never actually pulled the trigger.
Yeah,
And they've done a lot of heritage stuff too. I mean, they did some clearance diver reissues. They've done some mechanical variations for some kind of specialty military outfits and stuff like that. So if you look on their website, like they've done collaborations with like, special operations groups and things like that that they opened up for the average public to buy as well. So this is always one of those watches that has been really cool. And I think Jason Heaton has one of their clearance divers when they did a limited edition version, kind of relaunch of it. But it's mechanical. Like that to me is like I would drop $1,800 to get this watch. I mean, it's cool. It's like a Sword Hands 300 from Omega from the 60s, right? And that's honestly where that watch was inspired from, because up until that point in time, Omega had the contracts with the Royal Navy, especially the
Yeah.
clearance diver units for these watches. And once that contract kind of lapsed, they're like, well, we're just gonna make our own. And this is kind of what was created, which is cool. It's a cool story. But the watches are very cool, and a lot of these have fixed bars,
Yeah.
like they're fixed bars, and there's apparently now a company that is making bracelets that can be fit over fixed bar cases. I was like, I don't even know how that's possible, but I you have my
I'm
attention.
intrigued. Yeah.
I'm intrigued. You have my attention. So there's guys that are taking these watches that were used for military application and modifying bracelets to fit over them so that you can wear it like a normal watch. I'm like, that's such a super niche thing, but I'm so impressed that you did that. It's very cool. But yeah, CDWC, man. I guess I'll go with mine. I know they're going to be at this show, so it's worth kind of talking about. And again, I will always talk about that. Realistically, we are the podcast that made this brand even relevant to watch people. And I'm gonna have to go with Mr. Jones.
Mr. Jones.
Many, many, many years ago. For those of you that may be new listeners, you can go all the way back in the archives. I think it was probably 2.5 years ago. I talked about Mr. Jones watches on the podcast because a buddy of mine who's in my local watch club had the watch, a perfectly useless afternoon. It's one of them. It's literally the iconic
Mr.
Mr.
Jones.
Jones watch. And he brought it to this meetup. And I'm like, dude, this is the coolest thing. I'd seen this before and it kind of faded into obscurity. And he had one. And I'm like, this is it. This is an amazing watch. Like even it costs nothing. It's a quartz, nothing special. It was just a cool design. And this idea of the dial and this like little rubber duck and this guy kind of floating around this pool and this the sentiment of a perfectly useless afternoon. Like this is the kind of thing like I know time is passing, but I don't want it to think about time is passing. And we talked about it as kind of like a cool watch to get that was unique and special for not a lot of money during one of those episodes many, many years ago. And all of a sudden, within weeks of us posting this podcast, Mr. Jones was on the cover of every watch blog from
Blow it
every
up.
single person, blowing up. So much so that it prompted the brand to create this watch in a mechanical form. So now we have a mechanical version of a perfectly useless afternoon. There was also like a dark night version too, as well. But really cool watch. They make very funky things. If you're into unique design, esoteric stuff, this is a company that will probably drive with you. What I also find so interesting is they basically make everything internally. Like people at their offices are literally stamping the printing for their dials. Like it's all done by hand. They have different dial dies and stuff. And you can go to their website and you can see them doing this. But this is not stuff that is mass produced in China or anything like that. It's done in England. It's done, by their the people that work in that organization. And I think that's pretty freaking cool. So give us another shout out to Mr. Jones Watches, because even though you've never given us a cent, we have turned a lot of people on around the world to your company, and we'll take that to the grave. And we got the receipts. Have the receipts many years ago, so we'll take it. It's funny when you go back, and then like if you go back far enough in timeline, you're like, oh well, this podcast dropped on this date, and then all these articles come out later. I'm like, yes,
That is the nice part about time stamping.
it is. So we enjoy that. We enjoy that.
Yeah.
But perfectly used this afternoon. One of my favorite watches still to this day. And just a reminder that watch collecting does not have to always be so serious
Nor expensive,
nor expensive. You're absolutely right, bro. Absolutely right.
which, I think is a big hitter for a lot of people these days now that, you know, money's a little tight.
Yep.
Things are expensive. Kind of weird economic time. But yeah, no, I can't agree with you more. I think the sort of fun brands have kind of carved out their niche for sure in this hobby.
Mhm.
It used to be very serious. It used to be very kind of competitive, alpha bro, all that stuff. Like now you can have fun. You can have one of these. You can have a moon swatch. You can have an 8 lap. You can have build out a banger collection for a few $100. Whereas before, people are everybody was about chasing, whatever the next hottest thing was, or the Grail, or the limited edition, and you can have fun here too, which is
Yeah,
what I like personally.
I agree.
All right, I am gonna throw an obvious one out there, and I don't think everybody will agree, especially not recently. But I know our buddy Matt McD certainly will. I think a lot of people were very into Bremont before they sort of went awkwardly
Yeah.
off the deep end. I think they made a lot of interesting and intriguing watches, and I think a lot of people had things to say about some of their design choices or like some of their technical choices. It might have been, but I know for me, I'd always had an eye on the what is it, the Supermarine S500, and they made a rendition where it had sort of a when you think about like a dive bezel, and it's got the two different colors. Well,
Hmm.
you have your black, and then the rest was loomed, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. Like I
Oh
was
yeah, yeah.
this was a watch that was around when I was first kind of getting my feet wet, and I was like, this is neat. And the loom on the
It was
indices
nuts.
match it, and you can get it in a white dial, you can get it in a black dial. Like I was enamored with this watch, and I was like, oh man, this is so cool. And so you do some digging around, and I was like, oh, people are kind of hot and cold on this brand, and for various reasons, good, bad, or indifferent. But I was like, man, I was like, this watch is sick. And I was like, I've always really liked it. And now they've sort of gone in a completely opposite direction, which sucks because I feel like if they would have made this watch sort of updated and streamlined and sort of sexy, this could have been like a super banger. Like they have newer ones. I'm
Yeah,
just
I agree.
not that enamored with them. Like they don't.
No, they went very pedestrian with the later versions of the Supermarine before they completely destroyed what the Supermarine looked like.
Right. This one kind of, even though it's not, it doesn't really look like it at all. For some reason, it gives me sort of that Peter Blake vibe, like that same sort of like knock around diver where you just I'm gonna wear this thing and I'm just gonna beat the piss out of it, and so
Yeah.
help me
I mean,
God. Like that I was really into that when I first started getting into like the
well,
higher,
the
but
whole thing with Bremont is their designs used to be so good.
yeah,
And it was so weird because like this watch had a 2 o'clock crown, like a 2 o'clock crown. Like why? Because we can.
right. That was
And
another
it,
thing. It was super just strange. I was like, oh, okay.
and then you had like the way that they used to do their cases back then is like you had the lugs kind of protruding over top of the case, and the case itself was kind of recessed underneath. It was a very interesting design, but it was built all of from function. Like they're like, oh, well, we recess the case like that because it helps with the shock, the shock resistance of the watches when they encounter hits and things like that. Or if you're
Right.
flying a plane, like or landing a seaplane on the water, you're going to get hit with shock. And we want like it was all based on function. And so with that functioning came some type of form to it. And I love the fact that it was also named after a seaplane. Like the Supermarine was a plane. Like
Yeah, which
that's
is
where the
cool.
whole
Yep.
it just made so much sense. And you're right. Like what happened?
Nobody knows, and everybody's just like, "What?" Like, even if you weren't a fan of the brand, but you're like, "Okay, I respected you. I knew what you were about," and now I'm just like, "What is
That
the new logo, new sort of ethos?" You're just like, what's going on here?" You know?
yeah, and still to this day they haven't fixed the logo and the 12 o'clock marker situation. So you're dead to
No,
me.
which is a shame. Which is a shame.
It's a shame, man. I mean, it's like you see where brands were, and then you see how they are destroyed, and it makes you really sad because you know somebody somewhere came up with the idea for this thing and built it from nothing. Built it from nothing.
Yeah, it was somebody's idea at one point.
It was
Their
somebody's
startup. You know?
idea, and it was their yeah, it was right. Blood, sweat, and tears startup. This is the thing we're gonna invest our whole life into. And all of a sudden, somebody's like, "Yeah, no, it's mine now." And you're like, "What?" Like, no, it's mine now. And to see them just take it and just destroy it has to be the most gut wrenching thing you could have ever imagined. Because I'll be honest with you, I used to really love Bremont. Like I have so many guys that were in my collector group. They're like, no, dude, like this is the watch to get turned on to. They're gonna do big things. And like now I'm like,
Eh.
you sure about that? You sure about that? It's like no, they're not gonna do big things. They're gonna hopefully fade into obscurity.
That or just completely rehash it again.
I mean, you're gonna have to,
You
man. I
can
mean,
only do that
like,
so many times.
and just it's just like, what are we doing? What are you doing? It's just it's not good. Like, and I'll give you a perfect example. Like, if you go on the website right now and you look at the new Supermarine ceramic, okay, Supermarine ceramic. There's a green version. It's green ceramic and titanium. The worst part is when you look at the picture of the case back, you can see how they did the heating of the titanium to turn it green, but it has like these like tooling, like bluish marks because they couldn't get it completely uniform all the
Oh
way through.
gosh.
It's like, what the hell are you doing? And that's a $7,000 watch.
Yeah, it's tough.
I'm like, bro, you gotta be. And the thing is like you see it also on the bezel ring. Like you can see that it's not the same coloration. It's not because they couldn't get it to be exact. I'm like, ugh,
Yeah, that's no good. Jeez.
no good, man. I mean, like, come on. I'm like, well, it kind of creates this like rainbowy. Like, no, it's because you couldn't get it perfect. Your supplier couldn't do it, and this is what you're left with: this disgusting bluish color that has nothing to do with the rest of the color Pantone of the watch. But it's jungly. I'm like, okay, get get out of here, dude. Speaking of other brands that torpedoed themselves into
Oh,
to
here we go. That's a
obscurity,
nice segue.
one of my absolute favorite brands when I first got into watches, and again, the brand today is a shell of its former self, but the brand today is referred to as Speak Marin. It used to be Peter Speak Marin,
Right.
who was the original independent watchmaker that created this company and had the company ripped out from under his proprietorship and ownership because he fell on a bit of hard times, and basically he had some investors come in. They're like, "Oh yeah, we'll help you get you back on your feet." They basically pulled a coup, took over the entire intellectual property of the company, and forced him out
Oh,
of his
good.
own
Yeah.
brand. I loved these watches back in the day, and they still sell for a very, very good price point, given that they're independent and they do a lot of cool movement designs. But, Peter came up with all of these movements, and he had a very distinctive design, very, very beautiful collection. Now, some of the more recent versions are crap to me, but the original kind of academic, the Piccadilly case, like those pieces that you could find when they used to say Peter Speak Marin, those are the ones that I would go by and get just because they're stunning. They're stunning watches. They're beautiful. Like and it was representative of kind of a newer age way of doing British watchmaking. You had a riff on the classics, but you had to look towards kind of the future of what English watchmaking, British watchmaking could be. And that's kind of where he found his niche in design, and they they gutted it. They ripped it right out from him. And it's truly sad. But I used to remember I had come across some of his like technical catalogs and things like that when I first got into the hobby, and I was just so enamored with what he was able to do, and everything was in house, and everything was meticulously done, and all these things, and it was just very cool. So I can't speak much for the modern day collection because it's basically the brand since his departure, but the Piccadilly case is something that he created. The main logo with kind of this spiraling motif that they used for the logo itself was his design. The inclusion of this very like spaded hour hand, this very kind of like old school English clockmaker type looking hand, all of that was him. And the fact that they just use it now without him is so insulting to me. But I get it. It's a business.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely could see you just look at some of these and you can tell between geometry, uses of, mixing different numerals, use of color, like everything is done very deliberately.
Yeah.
Like these are all choices. These weren't like, you see some watches, especially of these, vintage watches where you kind of think they were just kind of cobbled together with parts that were sitting around from like various different watches that all kind of are in the same family, and you could just put them together and slap it.
Hmm.
And you see that a lot with like some old like Tudors and things like that, where okay, well, these all fit within this case, and we probably had these sitting around in the old warehouse. We're just gonna put them together and make another rendition of this watch. All right, cool. All right, fine. But like these are choices. You
Hmm.
could tell he picked these to put them together in this watch in this case, and I think that's what are the most admirable about these is that this is very much like the artistic side as well
Yeah.
as the watch and clock making end of things. But yeah, you could see you could definitely if you just Google Speak Marin, you could see sort of where he comes out of it because then you start getting into kind of this more you know mass produced in line with
Hmm.
everything else kind of look to things. But the name's still on it, but it just doesn't have the same
No.
weight to it.
No, it doesn't, man. It doesn't. And it's sad. It's sad. And because still to this day, it's always been one of those watches that I will find a way to own at some point,
Right.
like an OG. I'll find a way to own one because they're just too cool to not have. So we'll see one day.
Yeah. And I'll round it out. I mean, for me, I don't know how I don't know if you could have this conversation without bringing them up, but certainly Smiths.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, right. Like
I
that's one.
completely forgot about them.
Trust me, like I was right there. I was like, I know I'm missing one that's a big one for some reason. I was like, oh, Smiths, right? They have the whole Everest controversy going for
Yes,
them and
yes,
everything,
yes.
but they make cool watches. They're very sport, sort of like field inspired, sporty and things like that. But they make cool watches. They have a neat history. Their more recent offerings are a little more in line with what's popular today. But their vintage stuff is very cool. I mean, if you look at sort of their older stuff, it's really interesting because you could see different design cues that you would see on a lot of different watches from around the world, which is sort of what you were talking about
Hmm.
before.
Hmm.
Like I'm looking at, I look at some of these and I see, oh, those are kind of something I would have seen on Seikos of this time.
Yeah,
Like I see, they have one that kind of looks like a Seiko Laurel, and then you'll see, oh, this kind of looks like a Dirty Dozen,
yeah, yeah,
or the myriad of brands that sort of did that styling in that time. Like it fits perfectly in there. Okay, and then you're like, well, this sort of looks like a field watch. This kind of looks like an Explorer. Like they didn't necessarily put themselves in like just one basket. They made everything back in the day, and like I was looking at a lot of their vintage models, and they have cool stuff. And I mean, even in like they have like little clocks, they have pocket watches. Like it's cool. It's neat to see these things. I mean,
yeah.
nowadays I think everybody always, they think of the Everest. And it sort of has kind of like the 1016 look to it. But that aside, there's a lot to this. I mean, I see there's one that looks just like a Tudor. It's got sort of like that. I don't know what you call it, but it sort of looks like fish scales on the dial.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I don't know what the technique or what the geometry is called, but they literally look like fish scales. But it has like the same numerals as you'd see on like the old Oyster Princes, and you could just tell the time period it came from. And it's cool to see that they have such a big offering that once was. I mean, a lot of these brands are like this now, where they not even same ownership or not even same company now, but
Yeah.
this was a storied brand, and it's funny that to this day we still kind of have the controversy which watch went up, which watch didn't go up
Well,
with
they both went
Everest.
up,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
yeah.
no, but I'm everybody's kind of like, well, this one it didn't necessarily make it all the way up, or this one went up with so and so, and you're like, okay, fine, but the fact that it's even there is kind of just novel in its own
Yeah,
right.
let's not take that away from them, guys. Come on.
Right, right. But it's cool. I would think this is a neat brand, and especially on the vintage end. That's if I was gonna pick one up, it'd probably be one of these old. They sell like I think it's called a deluxe, but it's got so much Dirty Dozen to it that I love it, and yeah, for sure.
Amazing. Good pick, man. I completely forgot about
Yeah,
them. I
yeah.
completely forgot about them. So I'll round it out with my final pick. I'm gonna go with Roger Smith.
There you go.
So this is a watch that I've always wanted to have in my personal collection. I will never get one, to be honest with you, not unless I go through a midlife crisis, get a divorce, and mortgage my house to buy one. But I won't have one of these watches, but I can always appreciate them. I've been a fan of George Daniels for a long time. Again, I'm an Omega fanboy. That kind of comes with the territory. He realistically is one of the reasons why Omega is even still relevant as a company because of his coaxial design. But really cool that his understudy is still carrying on his legacy, producing watches in the traditional British way, making everything by hand, doing things that are unique, specialty pieces, specialty design, and it's just it look they're beautiful. They're absolutely beautiful, and everything about them, from the case design to the way that they do the guilloche, the bluing for the hands. I mean, you're talking artisanal ways of making watches, and the fact that him and his team, his group of apprentices, are doing this is quite special to me. And at the end of the day, they're still using the coaxial escapement, which I think is even more impressive. It's very cool to see that even though it's not the same exact coaxial that Daniels envisioned in 1974, 1975, that Roger Smith, outside of Omega, is the only other entity allowed to use a variation of the coaxial's design
That's pretty
for
neat.
his watches. Yeah. So it's sick. To me, it's so special. It's so cool. The coaxial looks nothing like the way that Omega does it, but it's just simplistic. Like, I would rather have one of these than a Longa, or something that was of the same caliber, a Patek, Calatrava or something like that. And, like, no, not even the same to me. This is far more worth the price, I think, than those other pieces. It's just special. It's very special, and only a few people on planet Earth will ever have one in their collection, which
Yeah,
is
which is also
quite
neat.
insane. Yeah.
Yeah, no, these are also cool. I mean, I always think about like his calendar watches, the moon phases, like you said, the you go down to like the guilloche and the just the little aspects and textural choices and things like that, and that he makes such really beautiful pieces. I think he did an event here. I can't remember if it was Red Bar or who, and I was like, man, the Schmitzster would probably kill to go to this.
Dude, I would have died. I would have died. And, like, just to have a conversation with Roger about the technical aspects of things, and just to listen to how he thinks, and it's amazing to me. And even his whole story. I mean, I don't know if you've heard the story of how he became George Daniels' apprentice, but it's quite fascinating. Basically, he's like, this guy's cool. He lives on this island called the Isle of Man, off the coast of England.
Yeah.
And basically, he's like, I'm gonna go be this dude's apprentice. And so George Daniels was not taking apprentices. Like, this is not a thing. And so he just, like, shows up on this dude's house like unannounced. He goes, I want to be a watchmaker, and he's like, that's cool. He's like, look, I made a watch, and George Daniels is like, this sucks.
This is
Get
bullshit.
out of here. Go make a new one and come back. So he goes back and he makes a new one, brings it back like a year later, does the same thing, and George Daniels is like, it's better, but it still sucks. And this is like an ongoing thing for like several
This
years.
is like a movie waiting to happen.
I'm serious. I'm serious. It's like, it's so stupid. It's so insane that it's nuts. But basically, after the third or fourth try of, like, learning all these techniques, learning. I mean, again, it's one thing to be like, okay, I can put a watch movement together. It's another thing to be like, oh, I hand carved the dial. you
Yeah,
know,
which
you
is
know what I
crazy.
mean? And it's like, especially if you don't come from that world or that background. And George Daniels is like, yeah, the engraving sucks, so you just go back and learn real guilloche and then come back. Like, it's crazy. And then Roger Smith comes back. Finally, George is like, okay, this isn't as shit as the other ones. This one is probably the best one you're gonna make without my tutelage. So let me go ahead and take you on as apprentice. Like, and this is like a 3 or 4 year period. Like, it was not a small amount of time. And that's kind of how it started. And he taught him everything he knew how to do, and did everything from scratch. I mean, this was it's a cool story, but it's wild. Like, this is a story, like you said, like, this is a movie,
Yeah, this is
what I
some
mean?
real Miyagi shit.
It's very cool. So we'll see.
No, that's cool. It's a good pick and something a little more off the beaten path than I think most people would have gone with. But yeah, it's nice, and it's nice to have some of that independent flavor in there as well for those folks.
You got to represent, man. They don't get enough love, and
Yeah, of
not
course.
in the same way that other things
Well, it's
would.
just
So
impossible. They can't put it out on as many pieces just off principle alone. So
that's my thing.
you're not gonna get that mainstream love. But hey, everything's got its place, and certainly, I mean, the fact that you can even stay afloat doing stuff like that just is sort of
It's crazy.
it tells you enough. You know what I mean? It
Yeah, it's
tells you
crazy.
enough about him. So that's cool. That's very cool. Nice pick. Yeah, I'm curious to see sort of what goes on next month. I mean, it would be cool if obviously I can't go there, but it would probably be cool a cool event to go to. But yeah, but looking forward to seeing these. Looking forward to seeing a lot of these drops. Hopefully, I'll get a chance to check out. Maybe either Fears or Studio will have the Gimlet at Wind Up this year, maybe. But we'll see.
We will
Yeah,
see. We will
yeah,
see.
yeah.
It'll be exciting nonetheless. So
Yeah. Other than that, we'll catch the rest of you folks next week. Same time, same place.
all right, my friend. Take care.
Later.